Welcome to the OMG Podcast with Paul Finkelstein. Great advice and talk with small business owners, workaholics, whiz bang entrepreneurs, and interesting guests. Here's your host, Paul Finkelstein.
Hey, everybody, I'm Paul Finkelstein with Operation Thank You Note. I'm just going to move the mic just a little bit away from me so I skim the microphone so I'm not breathing too heavy on all of you guys. Operation Thank You Note, what is that all about? I participated in this small business Super Bowl, the Small Business New Year's Eve on alignable.com platform. It is a small business site with nearly 9 million small business owners. And on there, by participating in their Small Business of the Year contest, for 5 years I've been doing that. It's really getting huge. Over 300,000 small business owners in North America, Super Bowl, if you will. Pardon the internet if it comes in and out. I don't know whether it's my Wi-Fi, my processor, or yours. That being said, Operation Thank You Note, one by one, I'm ankle deep into thank you notes. Some of the thank you notes are done as electronic digital format on Alignable. They have a recommendation tab over there. I go to the profile and I express my sincere thoughts of how that business owner connected with me on the Alignable platform and some kind words, and to keep the networking ball rolling. I do want to make mention, and I'm trying to pull up some of my notes, some of the people that I interacted with that are small business owners. You do know that 80% of small business owners within the first 15 years, that's a pretty high failure rate. Some people don't believe that. Some people do believe that. I think it's actually higher than that. So small businesses need all the support that they can get. Business cycle. I mean, it makes perfect sense because a small business owner does not have the same capital as a business owner to do all the marketing and all the things that a big business can do. So there's ups and downs with small businesses. So at the 2-minute mark, I want to mention some people, some small business owners and entrepreneurs that I've met on the Alignable platform. If you have not checked out alignable.com, I urge you to check it out. Highly recommend it as well. Thumbs up for you guys at Alignable. Chuck Casto is the head of PR over at Alignable. The founders, Venkat and Eric Groves' son, some other people I've met along the way, Amy in the background in engineering, as well as Jake, I believe, and Phil, and many others. And there's Brittany and Hannah, etc. And there's like a handful of people, probably like 100 or less employees, running a business completely remote. So it's incredible what they've done with small businesses. And here are the people that I want to give accolades to in their small business. Here's Operation Thank You Note. So it is fantastic to get to meet and get to know and see if I have interacted with all of these people. But you should get to know these small business owners on Alignable. There's JB Beckett with like over 400 votes. So he is definitely the popular guy on Alignable. But popular, of course, isn't everything, but he does know how to network. Brian Gregory, close behind there, probably upwards in the almost 300 votes. Michael Keller in the Boca Raton area. Helena Smolak. And then there's Jill Cohn, Kimberly Wallace, Tony Ransdale. Number 7 I think he's a little bit higher. I do want to shout out to you, Tony, because I know we had connected and support each other in the Small Business Super Bowl. Shane Hicks down in the Dallas area, I believe, or close to it in Texas. Paul Odendell, just a little bit north of me in the Port St. Lucie area, as well as Latoya Germain is in the city where I grew up in New City, New York, around exit 11 off the Palisades Parkway. Latoya, you know exactly where yard. Anton Burnett, Amberly Shreve, Dr. Karen Fiorillo in the Pennsylvania area. Karen is a top networker network or on this platform. And myself coming around 14 or 15 names correctly or close. Got the whole name there. Dr. Mary Wells, Jason Integrity, Maria Worth, Dr. Thomas, Leslie Jean Baptiste, Andrew Merkins, Tracy Holloway, and Sam Rothfuss. And then Angie Carlson, Susan Hussa, Kelsey Dunbar, Gunther Kramer, Dr. Jamaica Nadine Love, Sharon Mingo, Mark Robbins, Yolanda Bennett, a pet sitter in the Las Vegas area. Amazing Kat Sloan, kudos to you, Steve Kent, Paul Kirsch, Evan Raouf, a health and fitness guy, and then top Evan Raouf, then Stacey Miller, he is let's see, I think she's the VA perhaps, and Kathy Lowry, you Tom Kavanaugh, Dan Hughes, Phyllis Arnstein, Clayton Ivy, Char Ross, Stephanie Nat, Jeremy Watson, internet's a little spotty, Harold Bowser, Olea Moskaleski, Crystal Groves, Debbie Smith, Steve LaBroder, Paula Roberts, Victor Felix, Natalie DeLeo, Jose Patinici, a photographer out of the Hilton Head area, Victoria Toth, Joe Moore, Taffy Wagner, Len Marshall, Diane, JD, Hans Abbey, Janeri Michelle, Jeff Anderson, Maxwell Toliver, Wanda Cooper, and Amy Brandon, E.G. Sebastian, and Pedro Enriquez. Now we know why the Chuck Casto did it in a written format, so he doesn't have to pronounce everybody's name. A shout out to the people that I connected with on the Alignable contest, just the first quarter of the year. Shout out to Sandy Puck, photographer out of Denver, Colorado, Ed Katz out of Palm Beach Gardens, Kathy Fanshaw out of Carl Springs, Gustavo and Anna Banticor out of California, then David Weiner out of Brooklyn, New York, Evelyn Snow Hines out of North Carolina, Suzanne Graves out of California, Jenny Manning out of Frisco. The internet looks like it's spotty there. Joe Smith out of North Carolina, Matt Falk out of California, Frank Egan out of Ohio. We just recently connected on LinkedIn. Iva Talaco out of Washington State, Chris Kepler out of Washington State, Maria Worth out of Pennsylvania, Oleg Moskalensky out of Washington, Redmond, Danny Starr out of California, LA, George Grant out of Ontario to the north. We're in North America, Alignable that is. Cheryl Franklin out of California, Mike Ferris out of Georgia, Mary Wolkin out of Arizona, Pamela Weir out of Colorado, Westminster, Tim Lambert out of Virginia, Jack Holleran out of St. Petersburg, Florida, Cheryl Schumann out of California, Jeff Anderson out of Arizona, and then we have David King out of Virginia. Interviewed him on my podcast as well. David King is a solar expert. Check out David King on Alignable. Howard Steinberg out of Arizona, Leslie Cohen out of California, Francine Alonzi out of Ontario. To the north, our friends in Canada, Dr. Cheryl Lentz out of Illinois, John Collier out of Georgia, Mark Gilvey out of Virginia, a commercial photographer, Gary Hart out of North Carolina, James Matarazzo out of Boca Raton, Gary Lendorf out of Pennsylvania, Kat Sloan in British Columbia, Canada, Linda Schlitz out of Wisconsin, Carolyn Sampson out of North Carolina, Jill Cohn, Arizona, Kathleen Miles out of California, Stephanie out of New Hampshire, Julio Gonzalez out of West Palm Beach, engineer technician, Anya Brett Weiss out of Illinois, Karen Schweiger out of New Jersey, Matthews Zeiger out of New York, Domingo, Iowa, Valerie out of South Pasadena, Florida, Tony Raimondo, Arizona, and our voiceover king for our podcast, Jeremy Watson out of Arizona, Elizabeth Rand out of Fort Lauderdale. Thanks for your support, Elizabeth. Anita Eno out of Alabama, Karen Payton out of Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Kimberly Wallace out of North Carolina, James Clemens out of Panama City, Florida. That is Steve Liebrodor out of Tennessee, Sarah Finkelstein, Fort Lauderdale, David Clifton, Colorado, Paul Mai, Pennsylvania, Erica Sordo out of Lake City, Florida, Diane Steen out of Texas, Susan Hussa out of Washington State, Helena Smolak out of Washington State, Deborah Hackett out of Ohio, Lindsay Pentanici out of Lindsay, Carrie DeRosa out of Deerfield Beach, Florida, Philomena out of Orlando, Florida. Shout out to you. Melissa Willis out of L.A. Eileen Dawson out of Massachusetts. That's Northborough. Jeff Harris out of New Mexico. Bob Robinson out of Nevada. Willie Crawford out of Niceville, Florida. I never heard of Niceville, but welcome. Ron Gilbert out of California. Mansour out of Ontario. Emma Coleman out of California. Greg Stewart out of Canada, British Columbia. Paula Roberts out of California. Monica Cahill out of Georgia. Marietta. Stephanie Barger out of New Mexico. And then Rach, Florida. That's Sherry Mills, Pompano Beach, Florida. Wendy Shuring out of Melbourne, Florida. Lawrence. Shout out to you, Shane. Everything is not a hammer. Right. Shane. Roger Fergies out of Orlando. Gilliam out of Missouri. Lisa Acetal-Tolve out of Arizona. Kerry Klimas out of North Fort Lauderdale. And Amberly Shreve, Maryland. Steve Levinson, Delray Beach. I could throw an arms throw from here. Cindy and then Huasa out of Texas. Yolanda Bennett out of Nevada. Eric out of Oregon. Lisa Crawford out of Port St. Lucie. Claudia Coop out of Connecticut. Diane, California. And then that's Diana out of California. Brian Hill out of California as well. So that's Tina Huggins out of Arkansas, Louisiana. Shreveport, Mark Squire. Kelly Laurie out of Connecticut, out of California. Debbie Smith, Pennsylvania. Tanai out of Minnesota. Kevin Greenberg, Boca Raton, Florida. Gary Capps, Utah. Kilowatt King out of Texas. Susan O'Hara out of Rockledge, Florida. Beth Karpinski out of Wisconsin. Rosalind out of Jackson Heights, New York. Paul Wersant out of California. Ruth Aldana Ricketts out of Wisconsin. Daniel Clark out of Missouri. Laura Harvey out of California, Napa. John Keo or Homa Argia. I don't know how to say your last name, but Homa, welcome at British Columbia, Canada. Tara out of Texas. Bruce Lassner out of Lake Worth, Florida. Then we have Lauren Dahl out of California. Kevin Adams, Busy Bee Painting out of Boynton Beach, Florida. Now, here's some people to give some special accolades to that I connected with and I got some extra support from in the Alignable Contest, the Small Business Super Bowl. We have Stephen Kamensky, Jeff Hunter, Ed Katz, Gustavo and Anna Bentacor, Greg Jameson, David Weiner, Michael Stock, Angela Good Taylor, Suzanne Graves, Frank Agan, Chris Kepler, Monique Esbury, George, Dr. Grant, PhD, Yvonne Jones, Pamela Weir, Rihanna Milne in my own backyard in Delray Beach, Tim Lampert, Tony Ransdell, Mitzane. The last couple were John Stacy and Mitzane Graver. Then we have Jeff Anderson, David King, Rob Conti, Brian Hershko, and then hopefully Leslie Cohen, Neil Dameron, John Collier, Keith Wasserstrom, Mark Gilvey, Gary Hart, Ms. Bobby Alvarez, Tori Mathis, Kat Sloan, Carolyn Sampson, Jill Cohn, Rose Colombo, Kathleen Miles, Mike Robinson, Eliezer Castanon, Stephanie Knapp, Gunther Kramer, Vanessa Bush, Sari Ginskold, Bridget Giunta, Kevin Dodge, Therese Stewart, Danielle Burnock, Javier Napier, Tamarack, Florida, Davie Kucher, Alabama, Mario Castellanos in the mystery field, Patrick Noon, Jermaine, Missouri, Gary Colehill, Jane Parnell, Leyland, Chuck Casto, Lee. Thank you, Chuck, for your vote as well. Lee Kwan, Gamel Deweese, Valerie Hale, Tony Ramundo, Elizabeth Rand, Tom Andrea, Steve Rock, Anita Roy Bartel, Colette Martin, Jean Free, Gail Smith, Kimberly Wallace, James Clemens, Steve Loberder, Vanessa Galvanek, Cassandra Nordenbrock, Kim Nichols, of course, my better half, Sarah Finkelstein, Christine Kafer, Jason Bunn, David Clifton, Danielle Volpis, Eugene Campbell, Paul Walter, Helena, Melvin, Danielle, Evangelist, Haiti, Lindsay, Barbara, Jean, Holly, Elise, Charlene Pryor, Melissa Willis, Sherry White, Todd Mitchell, Beth Brown, Brad Richard, Cindy Hopkins, Mark Adderham, Byron Mulligan, Greg Stewart, Monica Kao, Joshua Clayton, Dennis Paul, Wendy Shuring, Lawrence Drank, Lesgert, M. Rose, Paluz Tulliver, Carrie Clintus, Chris Fullen, Yolanda, Joyce Paulette, Fox, Selena Pizarro, Marty Sidman, Lewis, Mark Grimes, Claudia Coop, Diane Booth, Smith, Diane Vo, Brian Hill, Barry Weiss, Cynthia Ferguson, Tina is back on, perhaps Joe Rangel, Mark Squire, Edward McKenna, Deb Ruth Ricketts, test 1, 2, 3, Ruth Ricketts, Marzea, Godza, then we have the Mike Shue, Homa, Suzanne Barrett from Talk Documentation, Nick Salvador, Lauren Dahl, Natasha, to all of you guys and the Small Business Owner Super Bowl, as well as the Small Business Eve, as I call it, the first quarter of every year on alignable.com. This is Operation Thank You. There will be some individual thank yous, but I want to make sure I try to include every. Tony, take it away.
You have been listening to the OMG podcast with Paul Finkelstein. We can help you build wealth without hogging your time. Schedule a one-on-one with us. Thanks for listening. Join us again for another OMG podcast segment.